Nice drink. And we got a Bubba Bing. Doop-doo, dooba-da-doop-a-doo. Making sure everything is working correctly. All right. Hey, Confusion. Thanks for subbing. How's everybody doing? Sorry if my if my fan's loud. Just let me know, and I'll turn it off. But it's like really cold. It's really super cold. Okay, so with let's go main camera for now. So with my normal camera, with my regular camera away for repairs, obviously we're using the older XF for the time being. We're using an older Canon XF XF 100. It's a decent camera, or at least was. It was a really good camera. So the XF 100 was a really good camera 7 years ago when I got it. Now it's a little less. It's a little less awesome. Actually, I guess I only got it 6 years. Yeah. Splitting hairs. But it was a really good camera 6-7 years ago when it came out, and now it's showing its age. Actually, let me go through a couple things. So we have like right now we have it actually set to like medium gain, and the aperture is wide open, and the shutter is at 360 degrees. Like it's almost quite as wide open as it's going to get. And so you can kind of tell, like, it's not the most sensitive camera in the world. It just does still have a couple features actually that are hard to get in a camera nowadays. So I keep it around. I keep it around for a very specific reason. And that is it has built-in IR functionality that's actually like really good. But aside from that, it's just kind of old. It's just kind of old, and I've been working with it today. I want to make it look nicer. There's some things about the particular look of it that I kind of bother me. So yeah, so that's what we're going to be working on for just a little bit here. So I've already gone through all of the process of, I've done a bunch of testing already. I've already brought in a bunch of footage. So this right here is the footage that we're going to be working off. You can see it's me. We've got the chip chart, and there my legs are. My legs are getting warm. So the sharpness on the camera, is it's all right. I've got most of the like back end sharpening turned off, particularly because we can go up to about 12 dB gain. But if you're at 12 dB gain and you raise the sharpness like at all, actually I can show you what it looks like. I've got some footage here. So if you go up to like 12 dB gain and you raise the sharpness, this is what it ends up looking like. So yeah. Yeah. Also, for whatever reason, this footage didn't deinterlace properly when I brought it in. This stuff's deinterlacing properly. So Yeah, yeah. So there's it's just an older camera. Also, one of the things, this is one of the quirks of Canon cameras, is so Canon cameras, if you're using them for if you're using them as an output camera and not a recording camera, they are locked at 59.976 interlaced as their output. So no matter what you have the camera set to, it will be at 1080i, 1080 60i. So that's kind of a thing to deal with. Now that's fine for certain environments, like in broadcast environments, or if you're using broadcast switchers, or I should say, really, if you're using broadcast switchers from 7 years ago. But yeah, it's a little off standard for today, and particularly off standard for web. Web does not like interlaced at all, at all. So yeah, the interlacing was an issue, and like half of OBS's built-in deinterlacing things are just awful. Like they're meant for video games, like they're meant for, you know, they're meant for like fixing an Atari. So they're just like, discard the field and double double the lines. What'll it matter? Like that's basically what things worked like anyway. And so yeah, so now we're in Resolve. We've got our footage brought in. So from media, we've pulled in kind of everything that we're going to be using. We've got it into our. Oh, why is that doing that? What is? Oh, I guess that was just a glitch. So we have it into our timeline, which in this case is actually just called Work 3. It's got a bunch of different stuff in it because I was doing. I've been working off of a very specific kind of thing. The color chart that we're using for this is the X-Rite Passport Video. X-Rite Passport Video is the color checker, the chip chart that we're using for this one. I've got two chip charts. I've got this newer Passport one, which is nice because it's got the plastic clamshell. It also has two different sides, so it has a gray card with a. Here, I can show this. So it has a gray card and a focusing wheel on one side, and this will also. So all these converging lines are also going to are handy because then you can measure where your moire distance starts. So like how fine lines can get on like someone's shirt or something, how fine they can get before you start getting these kind of that rippling optical illusion effect in the middle. Then it's got the gray chart also with the lines, the millimeter measurement along the side for testing resolving resolution, and then same thing, you've got the resolving lines in millimeters along the side, and your color chart, and then your three neutrals, so white, mid gray, and black. And yeah. So yeah, so that's the chart that we're using. I have another one. It's a Macbeth chart. It's an old Macbeth chart from the 70s that I have. No, wrong. There we go. Wrong things. That I've just started using less because it's old and it's starting to fade. Yeah. So this is what we're going to be working off of, and we can get it to, yeah. So we've got a couple things up here. Now I've got the scopes over on this monitor for now, just so that you can see them. Normally I'm actually going to have these over here on my left monitor, but then they're out of view. So I figure that working around the fact that I can't see my nodes we'll just deal with that as we go. So in Resolve, the workflow that you're going to be looking at is going through, basically each of these panels in turn down at the bottom: media, edit, color, Fairlight, which is actually just audio. Blackmagic recently bought Fairlight, and so they have rolled the Fairlight digital audio workstation into Resolve as of version 14. So that's actually absurdly intense, and there's no reason for me to click on it right now. But yeah, so Media Manager, we've already dealt with this. Edit, we're not really editing anything here beyond the fact that we want all of these clips in one timeline, so that when we go into color, because then we just have them down here as thumbnail clips, and so we can hop back and forth between them pretty quickly. So this is the one that we're going to be working off of, and the couple things that are sort of bothering me about it is it feels like there is so these neutrals over in the wall has these are pretty good, but in the middle here, obviously we're picking up some blue from the monitor, and that's not too bad. In the skin tones, we've got some magenta that, particularly right up here where we transition across the gradient. So these skin tones are something that I want to smooth out a bit. And then aside from that, the main thing that we're looking to do with this is actually get just something a little bit more aesthetic. So we're not doing too much correction here. We're gonna start with some correction, and then we're gonna do some aesthetic, and then we'll go from there. Yeah, so also one of the reasons why I've got why I want you to be able to see the waveform is because this is going to be better than trusting your eyes here. Is that if you want to figure out color grading, if you want to work on color correction and stuff like that, but you can't afford a super expensive monitor. I mean, I actually don't even have a super expensive monitor. If you can't afford a Flanders Scientific monitor, then what you do is you do it from the waveform. You do your correction from the waveform. Aesthetic stuff, for if you're just doing aesthetic stuff for yourself, then the main thing to do is you always want to err towards subtle. You don't want to get things too intense, because the more intense things get, that's when you're really going to start running into issues where oh man, it looked so cool on my monitor, and then I went and looked at somebody else's and it was completely different. So the more subtle you keep things, the more likely it is to look, not the same, but it's still going to look good on someone else's monitor. So the waveform, Earthman Dave's asking, is there a simple explanation for the waveform display? What is the x-axis? So x-axis is actually the x-axis of the image. So you read the waveform from left to right, and then vertically is breaking down all of the pixels from left to right. So in any given vertical line are these pixels placed at their IRE value. And it overlays red, green, and blue. for the collapsed waveform. So if you go over to Parade, so there's the individual ones. There's the individual waveforms broken out, just each into their own section, and then the collapsed waveform is they're all overlaid. And what this lets you do, so we can see we do have a little bit of blue off in this neutral. So this wall here, this is a white wall, and we can tell it has a little bit of blue because if we look at the waveform for this chunk, and so this wall right here is this section on the waveform, and if we look at it, it's not quite perfectly aligned. You know, blue is peeking out over the top just a little bit. So the shift here is not dramatic at all, but it is not quite perfectly aligned. The other things that we've got are the Vectorscope, which is really just a calibration tool. Like, you're not really going to use the Vectorscope on any given random image because of how kind of specific it works. And then the histogram, which is similar to the Parade, except this gives you your luminance value distribution along the x-axis instead of along the y-axis. Some people find this easier to read. Other people find the other one easier to read. I usually actually have them all up in a 4-up on my other monitor. But of the 4 of them, Waveform is the one that I use the most. So the first thing that we're gonna do, I can actually, you know what, I don't need to see that stuff over there, so let's move this down into this space. Yeah, that'll do. That'll be fine. Actually, I need it a little bit bigger. I need to be able to see those values. So a LUT, what we're going to be yes, LUT is a lookup table. And we'll deal with LUTs when we actually get around to the LUT end of things. Okay, so it really just looking at across. So a little bit of this I know is actually light pollution from the monitor. But because it curves up, so we really only need to deal with white above 640 IRE. So we can actually, so we're going to, with this node, we're going to take our qualifier and we're going to grab on this panel, so that should, there we go. There's our sections. All right, blue. So this stage of things, well, I shouldn't even say this stage of things. This kind of a process here is actually going to end up being really, really kind of microscopic changes. Purely because what we're doing here is just in the really small things. All right, we've got, it's not quite all. this. Okay, that's there. That's definitely also... Okay, that's working. Though, we do also need... Our red is a little bit out right there. And that's probably about as close as that's going to get. All right, so that's we're going to call that it for our for really our color correcting here. So what you can see now, so this line is a little bit more unified than it was. It's still dropping out a little bit of red on the bottom end, but that's fine. That's going to be largely obfuscated by noise, and honestly, we're largely just doing this like that. If we're honest, that correction probably didn't even need to be done in the first place. But hey, this is fun. And then the other thing that we did is, so you can see here in the middle, this stripe right here is this line. And so now instead of it being 3 lines over top of each other, it's now one unified line. So that right there is actually the extent of kind of the correction in these neutrals, just to sort of unify them. And it was all in kind of the peaks. So with that, we're going to move on to the next section, which is dealing with the magenta and the skin tones. And so we're going to go Option S, and we're going to create a new serial node. So this is, if you've worked in Photoshop before, this is essentially a best practice similar to working, to isolating changes into layers. So by keeping your effects isolated to a given node, it means that if you get a node entirely screwed up, you're not going to need to like undo absolutely everything. So if I go to something, no, I've got to have one that's got more. Do I not have any that has? You know what? I'm going to open file. Where is, there we go. Yeah. So you can, this isn't even, why the heck does that look like that? I don't know what's going on there. Oh, no, that should not have a base level LUT applied. Okay. That's the way that should look. So this was a LUT that I was working on a little while ago, replicating the Technicolor, replicating Technicolor process. So if we go through it kind of in reverse here, what's going on. Oh, yellow is still active. Okay, so there's the raw footage. So the first thing that we do is we adjust the Luma in order to meet kind of the boundaries that we're looking for. So I have on these other ones, I have some old Technicolor reference frames that I was just using so to get everything bounded between kind of just where Technicolor ends up falling. So that's Luma. Then we do a channel. No, where is it? Gain offset. No. Why is this not? There it is, the RGB mixer. Right. So what we do is we then create 3 nodes all in parallel of each other. So the Luma then breaks out into red, green, and blue. And so each one of these is a monochrome image with only either pure red output, pure green output, or pure blue output. So now the impact of that is that you end up with a image, as you can see, that is kind of a little screwed up. So we then do basically the same thing, but we add their counters, so cyan, magenta, and yellow, and then we've got this, which is not quite a negative image. So it is color negative, but luminance positive. So we don't need to, we just need to invert the hue, and so that's what this last one does. And yeah, so things can get a lot more complicated than Project Manager. Go back to stream tests. Then what we're going to be doing here, we're not going to be doing anything that complicated. Okay. What were we doing? We were dealing with the magenta. Let's isolate it. Let's just make it a little bit easier to look at, or a little bit easier to find what we're looking for by cropping out unnecessary information. One of the challenges of working with Resolve oh no, not softness, no, wrong, 0. One of the challenges when you first start working with Resolve is you realize that most of the controls are actually like really, really insensitive. So you have to drag them like super far in order to get anything. Okay, so if you're a good colorist, then you don't need to do this. I do because I'm not good. But so really all we're doing here is we're isolating the part that we're actually trying to look at so that we can then see it clearly in the waveform monitor. And so you can see we are getting this red peak, but we're also getting some clipping here at the very top. So that's hitting 1023, a value of 1023 IRE. So that's actually going to, that's actually clipping out, and that's going to be that spot right there. So we need to be careful about pulling things down too much because we are at the clipping point. So we'll start seeing tearing if we go too far. like that. We don't want to do anything like that. I feel like that's actually pretty close to what I'm looking for. Now the downside is that this is also going, because we're dealing with the red channels, and why did that just drop? There we go. You know what? I'm okay with that, actually. Yeah, that's actually smoothing that portion out just enough. Okay. New serial node. No. I said... Hello. Frickin' Siri. I said new serial node, not hey Siri. Can you mask areas, or is it only for the entire screen? You can actually, yeah, you actually can create really, really complicated masks and keys. So we can, okay. Let's go back to this. And actually, if we key, oh, excuse me. We're actually just going to change it in the qualifier. So this right here, you can kind of see it in the thumbnail. Like now this is showing you what it's actually applying to. And this is probably actually something that we should do with this anyway. Okay, so there we go. That's actually something that I should have done in the first place anyway, but I'm nervous. I'm nervous and, I don't know, jittery, he says as he takes more caffeine. So yeah, so that actually then helps us because now our changes, and we can actually bring that down a little bit more, because now it's limited to basically these flesh tones instead of impacting kind of everything unilaterally. So all of the changes on this node now only apply to the flesh tones. So that's actually better. I'm glad Photo Verite asked that question and reminded me of that thing that I should have done. Yeah. binding color space to the XY sounds like a problem. It is challenging. Actually, it is actually really challenging. And so, like, dealing with color space. So this is why it's actually, so you have your linked YRGB or your independent Y, because you've got all of these different colors. So it's each one is two-dimensional, but the interaction between all of them ends up creating a three-dimensional space. Also, likewise, this is actually, like, when you're dealing with any of these palettes, like these don't make any sense at first glance. It's like hue versus hue, what? But these are actually cylindrical. And yeah. You can barely see the difference in the video when the node is enabled. Yeah, that's probably that. Once everything goes through OBS and into Twitch, I'm not going to be surprised if it looks like barely anything changed out the other end. It's kind of how it goes. But yeah, so on the creative side, I'm gonna move the scopes away because I don't know if you need to see the scopes for creative. What do we want to do? What kind of a look? What kind, like, name a movie, name a thing that you think this should try to emulate. VHS, BVS, not BVS, not Fincher. VHS I actually have. Well, I mean, VHS we actually could do fairly easily because I have in this project already all of my VHS reference materials. Or no, that's not my VHS reference materials. That's now my VHS reference materials. No, never mind. My VHS reference materials are in the other one. But we could, I could pull in my VHS references. Well, now ContraPoints, that's in lighting. I guess that makes it challenging. I probably shouldn't have asked the question, because ContraPoints. So Natalie's stuff is almost entirely in lighting. And yeah, I should have just said, like, what's a film stock? Actually, let's go down my list of film stocks. What have we got? What do we got? Film looks. We got Fujifilm, D55. We got D60. We got D65. We got Kodak 2383. Kodak 2383. Wait, why do we have? Oh, never mind. So these are densities. So we got Fuji 3513, Kodak 2383. We got Rec 709 Fujifilm 3513, DI D55. Rec 709. That's way too intense. Yeah, we're not gonna. We got a bunch of my older ones. We've got Instant C. Instant C is actually one that I've been. You know what? Let's actually try this and see if this will work. Okay, so one of the first, we're gonna do a couple things here. So the first thing that we're gonna do. So I have this LUT that I just got from someone else called Instant C. Now, this LUT right here is meant for a Blackmagic Design 4.6K super high latitude camera, the Ursa Mini 4.6K. So it doesn't work. I mean, obviously it works in the strictest sense that if you turn it on, it does something, but it obviously doesn't work with the footage that we've got. So what we need to do instead is we first need to prep the footage to receive the LUT. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to go to VFX IO, so visual effects in out. So our input is Rec 709. So we're going to go Rec 709 to linear, and then we'll add another node, and then we're going to go VFX IO, linear to BMD film 4.6K, and then add another serial node, and now we should be able to add instant C, and yeah. So does that come off quite as nice as maybe you'd hope it would? But that's a little bit closer to what it thinks it's supposed to look like. Now, the major problem that you're going to run into with this workflow in this specific case is that really no matter what you do in order to prep it, you're not going to be able to get around the fact that this XF100 has, let's see, what's it got? It's got about 12 stops of, no, probably not even that much. It's probably only got like 11 or 12 stops worth of dynamic range, and you're trying to then map that to a LUT intended for a camera that has 15 stops of dynamic range. And yeah, so that's not really going to do anything for us. It's not really going to do anything for us. But hey, it was worth a try just to see what it would do. What do I want to do with this? Let's warm it up a bit. You know what, let's make reds a little bit punchier. Not much, just a bit. What else do we want to do with this? Split toning is always kind of a way to go. So the Love Witch actually is where I was kind of why I was going with a bunch of the Technicolor stuff. It was a bit of why I was doing that in the first place. So we can actually go back to that because I haven't technically finished. I didn't quite finish my. You know what? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, we got these going through. So what's on? What did we put on this one? I didn't label anything. What is this doing? Oh, this is color temperature. So let's actually reset that. We'll reset these. We'll actually delete this node. Delete this node. So these are then going, this one will be, no, come on, let me rename it. Why is it not letting me? No, come on. Rename it. reset node, change label. It's not called rename, it's called change label. Okay, so Luma. So the couple things that we need to do with this. So for Technicolor, Technicolor's range is about 64 to 768 IRE. So we're gonna go to our ganged YRGB. So that's going to be about accurate. So let me get the scopes back over here so you can actually see this. So that gets our blacks at 64, and then we're going to pull our whites down to 768. And then we'll bring these back up on the output on the other end. But so that's sort of the first thing that we're going to do there. All right, new serial node, change label, red. Delete link. Change label, green. Let's just add a node, add a corrector. Change label, blue. Link all of these back to where they go. All right. Monochrome, red is going to be only red. Oh, that's blue. Sorry, I had blue. Reset. Blue, green, monochrome, only green, red, monochrome, only red. Now, new serial node off of red. Change label cyan. Change label yellow. So these then go, no, and now we need add a node. We need a oh, what's it called? Splitter? No. Parallel? Yeah, it's a parallel mixer. Yeah, parallel mixer. Add one input. Let's delete that link and just keep this clean. Keep this looking. No, wait. What did you come from? Wait, what are you? You're a random. Yeah, you don't belong there. There we go. Delete that link. Delete link. Add one input. Magenta. Yellow. All right. Let's move all this stuff around. No. into the parallel mixer. Now we need a serial node that's going to, this is going to be invert hue, and there we go. So, all right, that is clearly super way too intense. That is absurdly intense. So let's pull back. Oh, man. Oh. All right. We need to... Oh, wait. Oh, no. I know what the issue is. Actually, okay. Each of these are being mixed at 100%. So we need to reduce them in... We need to reduce them in luminance to 33.3. That was not the correct one. Oh, why can't I remember where this, which output I'm looking for? No, it's not the main gain. It's not the primaries bar. What is it? What am I looking for? What am I looking for? You know what? The easiest way, if you can't remember how you did something last time, the easiest way is just to go look it up. What did you do? You did... contrast, pivot, saturation, hue, Luma mix, temp tint. What did I change? Oh, it's in the key input. Right. Key input, gain. That's right. Okay. Going back. Don't save. All right. Key input, gain down to 0.333. No. There we go. All right. All right. So that you can actually see, like, that's got a little bit of that Technicolor Love Witch look to it. Now, for my tastes, the reds here are way too intense, are way too just like blazing ruby. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna not there. We are in general going to go to our qualifier. And how is that not grabbing? Oh, I know why. Saturation. You know what? Let's redo it. All right. And that's also, what if we, all right, we'll live with that. Okay. Back to here. So saturation, we should be able to pull down. Uh-oh. Oh. Oh, is it going to crash? Oh, there we go. Yeah, just crashed. Okay. All right. That happens. I really should actually install the latest version that is a little bit more stable than the beta version that I'm still working off of. All right, so we got to redo a couple things. Okay, so that put us back. So key output, we need to redo. Come on, select the entire thing. 0.333. I just put in a whole bunch of threes. Gain 0.3. Lots of threes. Okay. There we go. Serial node. Qualifier. Oh, we need to pick a base and then add to it. All right, and then we'll save. All right. Hue versus saturation. You know what? We don't even need to go hue versus saturation. We can actually just go to our general panel. And we're just going to roll the edge off that. I think a little bit more edge off of that. No, we don't want to touch pivot. 403 saturation 41 40. Now I feel like I'm definitely seeing some like artifacting edges in there. So in our qualifier, we're just gonna make that, we're just gonna expand it. Nope, I don't want to move the center. I want to increase the width, and we'll soften it a little bit more. And there we go. Those reds are still popping pretty good. But I mean, that's what you expect. That's what you want. That's what you want out of that look. That's what that look's gonna give you. After that, let's do another serial node, and let's move all of these. Nope. Let's move all of these up just to make it a little more intelligible. Now this one we're going to use for some broad additional changes now that everything else is kind of collapsed. I am amazed that that is preserving anything resembling detail. Off. I don't actually want a crunchy S-curve. I think I want the no, I don't want the opposite, because that's where it's going to start falling apart. But I do want a roll-off on highlights. So let's... let's also soft clip the reds just a bit. But also... nope, too far. There we go. Yeah. Green. Okay. All right. All right, I think I like that. Oh, so why was I asking about webcams on Twitter before? One of the, I was thinking about doing something like this, but obviously the output of anything like this that I do using my cameras, because I don't use common cameras, I really, it's pointless. It's pointless to share with everyone, with anyone. I shouldn't say with everyone. It's pointless to share with anyone. So in particular, the stuff that I do for my my normal camera for my micro, um, that's it would be a lot like what we saw earlier when we were using the Instant C uh, LUT. How it's like, oh, you can apply it, and it just kind of it 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 doesn't really do anything actually productive. Um, and so, yeah, anything that I did for my main camera would essentially just behave like that if I gave the output LUTs to anyone else. So I was asking what cameras people use, because I was wondering like, okay, well, what are the most popular cameras? Because maybe then I could do stuff like this using test footage, sample footage from said camera, and then I would have an output that would be widely applicable because it would apply to a very common camera. But hitch there is that the most common camera that everybody told me, which was like the 920, the C920, the Logitech C920, um, is that it sucks. So that was actually the problem with the with that, or I shouldn't say it sucks. That sounds mean and dismissive. But one of the things that I noticed, so actually here I'll show you. I already went through kind of the, so if we go into Project Manager, yeah, there's the C920 right there. So I already went onto YouTube and I grabbed a bunch of like I just did a search for like C920 test, and grabbed a whole bunch of like, there were obviously like there were hundreds, there were just hundreds of people who were like, hey, I just got a C920, and so here's my unboxing and test footage. And it's like, I mean, it's understandable, like that's what you do. But if we look at these, like just the sheer, oh, this one is one that I had already started to isolate. Let me undo that cropping, undo the cropping. So just as we like flip through these, like the difference between them is so dramatic, like in how this camera reacts to your ambient lighting situation, and just the quality control between various units is so all over the place that I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I can I can maybe do something, but it would not, in fact, actually give us a meaningful output. And yeah, yeah. So the main thing that struck me about the C920 once I started looking up all of the test footage was that the skin tones are um, uh, not that great. So like she's actually her setup, whatever she's got going on with her setup, her skin tones are coming off just fantastic. Everybody else, I mean, so this kid's green. Uh, he's like blue. She's magenta. She's great. So I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're gonna do about that, like as kind of a, I don't know, one stop thing. So that's going to be okay. So Admiral Stanley's asking, is that related to lighting or QA issues with the camera? And really, it's both. Like the actual answer is both. I mean, the C920 is $100 webcam. You know, it's going to be inconsistent because it's $100 webcam. That's just how it goes. Like that's not a slam on it. That's just the reality of what you're getting for $100. Is you're not getting something that's going to be super super consistent across across units, because that's not what you're paying for. It's fine, you know. You don't need that. If you're buying $100 webcam, that's not what you need. You need something that, you know, looks pretty decent. Also, the C920 is also pretty old at this point. Like I think it's what, like 4 or 5 years old. Maybe that old, maybe a little less. Maybe it's only like 3 or 4. So that's kind of the like core limitation of the camera of the C920, is that like, so it's a little bit older. It's a inexpensive, accessible unit, but that means that it's going to be inconsistent from unit to unit. It also means that it's going to come with a lot of built-in, the camera's brain is going to be working very hard to bring everything to its idea of a baseline, which means that it's going to react very wildly to changes in different people's lighting setups. So one of the things, like whenever I'm talking with people about like camera buying advice, cheap cameras are going, like if you're looking to create consistency in your output, cheap cameras are going to fight you the whole way. That they're going to have automatic systems that are going to be difficult, if not impossible, to actually turn off. And, you know, they're going to have automatic color correction. They're going to have automatic color temperature. They're going to have automatic exposure, and it can be very difficult to turn them off. In fact, in many cases, you can turn some but not all of them off. So like a lot of handy cams, you can turn off automatic exposure, sort of like you can turn off automatic aperture, but you can't turn off automatic gain. So like that's the kind of like tricks that you'll end up running into that will trip you up in the long run. So with all of that, it means that creating things like LUTs that are going to look good. It means that creating subtle color correction LUTs that are going to look good on everybody's installation of a C920 is almost impossible, because it's going to react so much to other factors that, yeah. I mean, so one of the things, like I would just tell you that probably one of the reasons why this one that we're at right now, why hers is off so much more from the others, is that her walls, like these walls are probably actually like lilac, which the camera is then reacting to, because it's going to be looking for a white point to balance itself off of. And if your walls are lilac, you know, it's going to respond to that. It's going to change it. So that's just so the whole idea of like, hey, let's sit down and do this whole LUT creation thing, but let's do it with a camera that everybody uses. I realized pretty quickly, I'm like, it wouldn't work. Unfortunately, I mean, it would still kind of be fun, but I mean, just the sheer difference in the range of output of what the camera ends up producing, it's what you would expect out of a $100 webcam. It's fine, but it's not consistent enough to be able to say like, hey, everybody, here's a thing. Here's a thing. I hope it works for you. I don't know. Yeah. So, going back, yeah, we don't need to save on that one. Where are we at? I mean, I'm not slamming. Yeah, it's use as intended. I mean, it's you get what you pay for, and I would say that like I mean for the value and for most people, like for the vast majority of use cases, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, the 922 looks a little bit better. I think the response time on the 920 was actually like really slow, and it was kind of frustrating watching all of the footage until I realized that I was for the most part watching like 3-year-old footage, and then it's like, oh, okay, I guess that makes a lot of sense. And for a lot of people, like the C920 was their first. It was their first actually like affordable, viable 1080 webcam, even though it's not actually 1080, it's upscaled. But yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's fine. What about phone cameras? Okay, so phone cameras are a little bit of a trickier subject. So the main issue with phone cameras end up being a little like, particularly with the iPhone, like the more expensive iPhones, they are a little bit more consistent, specifically because Apple is putting so much effort and tech and QA into those cameras, that you are going to see a level of consistency between them. The main issue is throughput to actually get the video stream from the camera into your computer, unless you're just using the phone camera entirely as a like, unless you're just using the phone itself as your streaming, as your broadcaster. But in that case, then the phone is not actually powerful enough to handle it, and so you end up with a choppy bit rate, frame rate anyway. So yeah, that's kind of the phones end up being a bit of a weird one in that regard, because you don't really have. Actually, there are a couple phones out there. I believe there are a couple phones out there that actually have a proper full bandwidth HDMI output. And those ones, yeah, those ones might actually then possibly work. Like, I think I swear I've seen a phone with a micro HDMI output. Anyway, yeah. Yeah. Now, if you record on your phone, and then just output the video, that usually tends to be fine. The phones can usually handle internal recording. It's just that they are not physically built to send that video outside of the phone in real time. So, yeah. Let's go through the last couple stages of this. Okay, so we've gone through our whole process here. Like, so just to reiterate, so we started off. So this initial stage, the first two were color correction, so we're base level color correction. Then we went and did our Luma adjustment in order to bound ourselves to what our intended throughput was going to be. Then we broke things out into component parts and then mixed them back together and then inverted them. So this creates our 3-strip Technicolor process. This recreates our 3-strip Technicolor process. Then we specifically altered our reds because they were just a little bit too aggressive. And then we did some finishing touches, adjusting saturation and brightness and contrast. And so that's what gets us out the other side. And the reds are still extremely crunchy. But honestly, that's actually, I mean, that's what Technicolor looked like. Not quite this aggressive. It's still a little aggressive. It's still a little aggressive, but we'll just take it and we'll move on. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna right click down here on our thumbnail, and we're going to generate a 3D LUT, a cube format 3D LUT, and tech test, stream LUTs. We're going to call it, so DOXF. So Dan Olsen XF is the camera that we're basing it off of. This is Technicolor. Technicolor stream. I think this is 01. Yeah, this should be 01. Save. Okay, so that's going to create our cube file. So with our cube file, then in order to get it into OBS, we're not going to want the crop tool. So this right here is the actual lookup table that OBS uses. So this is their baseline. This is the baseline color space for OBS. And so what this is this is just a PNG file of the three-dimensional LUT arranged in a 2D grid of 2D grids. Current LUT copy, final copy. No. We got that 01. If we do it again, it increments, and we got plenty of variables in there. That's good enough version control for what we're doing. Okay, so this is the actual lookup table that OBS uses. This is the original version, the baseline version. So what you do is you import, or you just open up the original baseline PNG into Photoshop, add a color lookup. So now we're just going to, this will let us load a cube 3D LUT tech tests. Where did we put it? We put it stream test, stream LUTs. No, not that one. DOXF Technicolor stream 01. Open. All right, so that applies it over top. Okay. Yes, that is correct. File, export as PNG. Oh wait, no, this needs no file. No, it's easier actually just to save as. Technicolor streams. We can get rid of all of this stuff, but we need to make sure we do not save it as Photoshop. We save it as PNG.png. Save. Okay. Oh boy, I'm really looking forward to how this is gonna look. All right. Main. Wait. All right. Oh, wild. Yeah. How do I? You'll just have to trust me. You'll just have to trust me. All right. Main. Cam 1. Filters. Add. Apply LUT. Let's call it XF Technic. Browse. Go find it. Stream LUTs. DOXF Technicolor stream 01.png. Open. And there it is. So, all right. So the first thing that we see when we turn that on, so let's flip back and forth between having it on and having it off. Okay, so on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. Definitely one of the main things that ends up happening is you can see the noise, particularly like down here in the shadows, in my sweater, basically in anything that's a little bit darker, which is naturally where a video camera is going to end up generating a lot more noise. That noise has now taken on a very, very distinct color cast, and color separation. So yeah, so that's pretty substantial. Oh, these are just a couple of these are actually a bunch of LUTs that were all intended for the other camera. It was fun. I wouldn't use this. I would not use this. That is way too noisy. But I mean, hey, in stills it looked kind of fun. So now here's a question. If we go main monitor, back to resolve, and then pull up next to each other. So here's what it looks like in one versus the other. So you can see that we're ending up with some decay in the different stages, like as we're transferring from one stage to the next. So part of the reason why we definitely seem to be getting so much noise is that compared to the actual version that we tried to output, it's raising our shadows substantially. It is substantially raising our shadows. So that would be a thing that we would then want to deal with. Now, how is it impacting our highlights? Our highlights, however, are not really changing all that much. Like, they are visibly no, it is changing. So now the main thing that's happening here, or part of the reason of why you end up with these kind of unexpected artifacts, is because of that Photoshop step. It's just the nature of the beast, that when you're bringing things into that format, that you're basically just taking your LUT and you're applying it over a gradient and hoping that the output is reasonably close, and also it's going through a slight compression as it comes out the other side. You just end up with some unexpected outcomes. So the way to then deal with that from there would be to go back into Photoshop, and just do a little bit of lighter tinkering to try and correct. You wouldn't want to go all the way back to resolve. You could go all the way back to resolve and fix it there, but you probably don't want to go back that far. You would instead, let's close that. You'd instead want to, here in Photoshop, add, an adjustment layer. So probably just, raise the contrast a little bit. Just ever so slight little tweaks, and then stream 02. Make sure it's a ping. Zero 01, 02. I don't know if it's really really fixing it. This is probably, I don't know if I'm going to say that this is unfixable. But now we're basically just shooting in the dark. One of the things that we're absolutely going to run aground is that, you know, the output of this camera, at a certain point you're just pushing it too far. You know, you're doing too many things to it. But I mean, that improved it. That improved it a little bit. A little bit. Though, here's the thing though, is when I turn it off, if you look, we still have that noise. Like that low light noise, that is endemic to the camera. It's just that as we're applying all of the different alterations to it, the noise takes on a lot more chroma, and so that's the main thing. That's the main thing that ultimately is going on, is that noise is, it already exists and it's getting boosted and it's getting its. I mean, by the nature of the LUT, it's being quite substantially pulled in each given chroma direction. So if there is a pixel, if there is in this noise, if some of this is like, okay, well, some of it's blue, some of it's green, some of it's red, all of it is going to get pulled hard in those specific directions. So, yeah. So that ends up doing it, is rather than being kind of a, right now, if you look at it, like the noise is reasonably close to monochrome. If we went in and pixel peeped, like just looking at it, I can tell that it is in fact chromatic noise rather than monochrome noise. And if we went in and pixel peeped, you would definitely be able to tell, like, oh, okay, that is chromatic noise. But it is at the very least, like in its current state, acceptably close to monochrome. But then obviously if you apply a intermediate LUT, you know, and the thing is that also with the, like, we're not even applying the LUT to a pure signal, because the signal is itself getting interpreted on a couple steps as it gets into OBS. And OBS doesn't actually, like, OBS doesn't have a 10-bit YUV video interpreter, so, all right, it just kind of, you know, it already goes down to 8-bit just in the first place. So, yeah. Is it possible to do the same process but using live video as the test image? Sort of. Not for OBS. You could do it in Resolve, where you can use Resolve. You can run Resolve through LiveGrade, or you can use LiveGrade features in Resolve in order to be doing color correction on a live image. But you wouldn't then be able to have that same live image going, or unless. Okay, here's the hitch one way or another. In order to, you could apply LiveGrade as an, I think you would be able to apply LiveGrade as an intermediate in between OBS, or in between the camera and OBS. But that's going to be, one, introducing delay, and two, it means you would always need to have that signal chain in order to preserve everything. Otherwise, you would still need to go through the process of compressing your LUT into the PNG style LUT that OBS uses. And so that last part in the chain, you know, getting a true sort of final look at what OBS is going to do to it isn't gonna happen. So, yeah. I hope that made sense. But because that was a yes and a no answer, depending on sort of like what your looking for. But yeah, you can use you can use Resolve Live Grade. I've never used it before. I have never needed to. It is a thing that I know exists, and in theory, I have the hardware to do it. I've just never done it. Maybe I should do that sometime. Yeah. Yeah. No, but yes. No, but yes. No, but yes. I do kind of feel like I didn't really get I didn't really get what I was looking for. But this was fun one way or another. I suppose if you hooked up the camera input to that scope thingy, then varied the lighting, you could get more of an idea of how the camera responds. Yeah. Using so Live Grade does let you use live scopes. Basically, yeah. That would there's a whole bunch of things that you could actually do if you were really looking for tight feedback on the things and the stuff. Where's Resolve? Oh yeah. Zoom on in. Zooming on in. All right, I think I fixed the focus in a second here. All right, so that gives you an idea of what the color. Oh, you know what? Just out of curiosity, I just want to see what this does. Let's add another serial node, and let's, after we have done all of that, just because, just for kicks and giggles, let's run it through X-Rite color checker passport video match. And watch it just completely undo like everything that we did. Oh, but it still left the reds like nuclear. Sort of? Did that? How much did that override? Now that right there, in theory, actually probably should have been maybe should have could have been our first step originally. So we're gonna grab a still, and we're going to we're going to apply this grade because it's going to be less to delete. Source rec, yeah. So that right there, actually, let's just do this. DOXF. Chip chart. 01, not PNG. And then if we come back over here, stream tests, stream LUTs, chip chart, stream 01, open. Interesting. The red still, for whatever reason, all of the things that I seem to do with this camera end up being, because a bunch of the experimenting that I was doing earlier today also was kind of behaving like this, where it wound up being incredibly aggressive in the reds. Yeah. There's a lot of red in the Dan. Sorry, we just got a question here. Let me read the question. Is it a good idea to drop individual clips into Resolve or an entirely pre-rendered edit? Oh, that's a complex question. Okay, so I would assume that question is applying to doing a full color grade. And in that case, what you're actually going to do is you're going to do something called a round trip. Where what you would do is, do I have anything that I could demonstrate this on? I wonder if I have just a small project that that this would work on. Is there a good place / book / video or whatever to learn all of the adjectives you are using? No. Maybe. I don't know. I really don't know. There's got to be at least someone who has a pretty good website for learning this stuff, that actually has it all in like one place. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I wish I knew. I should know, but I don't. Porg Zone. Oh yeah, Porg Zone. What here would be a good... Okay. Okay, so here's here's my Book of Henry primary edit. So if I turn off my adjustment layer, so here's how I normally actually end up working in with my LUTs in Premiere. Is so I've got all of my baseline footage. So like these two tracks, so V1 and V2, are all of the parts of me talking to the camera, and then I have an adjustment layer right here that spans the entire. Let me pull over my. So it spans the entire track, and then it just has this. So Lumetri color, basic correction, input LUT, DO, Kodachrome, riff V8 is just what it ends up applying across everything. So if we take this, all right. All right, screw it. Let's just see what it happens. We would want to go File, Export, Final Cut Pro XML, and let's put this in a test. Yeah, sure, just under tech tests. I'll move it later. Okay, so please check the FCP translation results for possible issues encountered during translation. Yeah, something's gonna be all kinds of screwed up. Who knows? But then let's operate under the vague assumption that that worked even remotely. We would then back in Resolve import an XFL. So we actually want to go down to tech tests. There it is. And now this will source file import. You know what? No, cancel. I'm going to save first just because this might, I have no idea what this is going to screw up. Normally you would actually want to create a new project before you did anything like this. You would actually start from file. You would have planned this a lot further ahead than a minute and a half ago, but let's just see what it does. Yeah, okay. I mean, I know what it's supposed to do. I just have no idea what it's going to do in this specific situation because nothing involved in this process has been prepped for what we are doing to it at this moment. So, yeah. Is crunchy just a description of the waveform? Yeah, sort of. Crunchy usually means that you're hitting a point where the separations between things ends up becoming very visible. So like if you're getting distinct lines between colors, like if things aren't really blending into each other, if they're just you know, if they're creating hard boundaries, that's usually what you're going to like refer to as like crunchy. It's particularly in the blacks, like in your shadows and in your blacks. So when you've got like 3 shades of black, but they all have like a visible line between them instead of being imperceptibly consistent, like you'd be like, oh man, that's getting pretty crunchy. This might take a while. This might take a while. I got no idea. I got no idea what it's struggling with, what it's going to do. This, yeah. FCP XML describes the certain aspects of project and events that are useful for other applications. It does not describe all possible data and therefore is not a substitute for the native project and event data organized in a library bundle. Yes, absolutely. So EDL, so an EDL is an edit decision list, and an EDL is also going to be technically exported as a .xml file. The reason, generally speaking, people use a Final Cut Pro XML instead of a naked EDL. So a naked EDL, so it's an XML file that is at its root just a giant comma separated value table. The reason why people use Final Cut Pro XML is because it's a little bit more of an industry standard. It has a little bit more flexibility than just a naked edit decision list. And so you're less likely to completely lose random stuff. And yeah. I have... Do I ever use Final Cut Pro? Yes, but only rarely these days. I haven't had to use it consistently. I think my last Final Cut Pro specific job was 3.5, almost 4 years ago. And yeah. So, yeah. I mean, it's an industry standard that's hung around, and it ends up being a little bit more robust than just a naked edit decision list. If you have a very simple edit, like if it's all just like straight cuts and you have properly generated edit ready versions of your footage, so you're not using like weird container formats like you know, oh dang it, like MTS files, you know, MPEG transport streams. Yeah, if you're not using something weird like MPEG transport streams, then and all you have is like straight cuts and you're not overlapping anything, so you go through the process of simplifying your project, and like you don't apply any effects, you don't have any adjustment layers, just nothing like that. It's all just like hard cut, hard cut, hard cut, hard cut. Then an edit decision list will likely import faster and reasonably accurately. Is FCP XML standardized? Is there a published DDT? I would assume all of that. That's a dimension of things that I don't ever have to actually like deal with directly. But yeah, I mean, I would assume everybody is going to like operate off of a standard schema just because otherwise it defeats the point. of having a thing that can it's one of those weird cases where everybody wants to fight with each other and get everybody into their own ecosystem that is like, no, none of our stuff is compatible because we want you to use our stuff for this, but at the same time they have an incentive to like actually play nice so that you know it so that users can actually switch and they don't feel like they're trapped so that they don't feel like they're trapped inside of an ecosystem. It's kind of funny the I don't know the like back and forth arms race there. You know, I mean, Premiere allows me to export a Final Cut XML, and it allows me to import Final Cut XMLs, and Resolve lets me do both of those, even though Resolve and Premiere and Final Cut are all technically in competition with each other. And each of those companies has their own version of the tools that are being used and are being competed with. So if you want to basically do something very similar to Resolve, if you want to do what Resolve does in the Adobe ecosystem, you're looking at Prelude, Premiere, SpeedGrade, and Audition. And then if you're doing it in the Apple ecosystem, it's Final Cut Pro, Apple Color, Logic, and they don't actually have an ingestion tool. So F that. And then Avid has, well, it's Avid and Pro Tools. And I think they also have an ingestion program as well. I don't remember. But yeah. Have you heard about the HVC problems happening right now? Maybe. I don't know which problems you're referring to. So maybe not. It's not just coming to me off the top of my head. "78 of 78 clips were not found. Do you want to select it? Yeah, let's. Okay. Let me just go manually find these. Where would these? Come on, that path is not that deep. I should have actually just said, I should have actually just told it to offline the clips. It gave me a pop-up. I should have just said offline. Oh well, we'll see what it finds. What was I talking about? Oh, HVC problems. Yeah, no, I don't know. Maybe. I did find 7, which is probably actually, I mean, those are likely the ones that I actually needed anyway. I don't need the others. Actually, that path was deeper than I thought it was. Well, no, not than I thought it was. I I selected a much larger chunk of data than I maybe should have. Oh, there we go. 71 to 70 clips were not found. Do you want to select another folder to search? No. All right. That should offline. There we go. There we go. Okay. There's all of our errors. Oh, yeah. Heart in track V2 at timecode 1001 with real name, file not found in search directories. Oh, man. Okay, so it was looking for a whole bunch of things that are like, yeah, okay, whatever. But it found the important stuff, and also that is really loud. Mind-numbing. Oh, that is very loud. Why is that so loud? Okay. But anyway, the important thing, okay, so the whole reason why we did this in the first place, right, is so this is a process called round tripping. So this has actually, now that I look at it, managed to import a tremendous amount of the timeline and has placed stuff. It has placed placeholders for all of the things that are in fact missing. So what you would do is you would go through your editing process in your nonlinear editor of choice. Then you would export your edit decision list or your XML file, and then you would bring that into Resolve. You would watch through it in order to basically just make sure that nothing got like terrifically, horrendously screwed up, and then you would end up going through it. So you would go into your color panel, and then you go through it basically clip by clip, and then you apply all of your different grading things. So now you can also, if something that I didn't show over here is, so we have here, we've got two different tabs on the node panel. So you have your clip nodes and your timeline nodes. So you would, in a case like this, go through and be like, okay, well, I just need a new serial node, and I'm going to add, where is it, Kodachrome Riff V8, and then that now applies to the entire timeline. And then on specific clips, I can go through and be like, okay, well, this close-up clip, or, yeah, so like this close-up clip here, I want this one in particular to, I don't know, something, just, it's got too much green. We need this to be like just really frickin' really purple. We need it to be like intensely purple. Just that one specific clip needs to be intensely purple. And so we've now changed that on a clip level, and we can go through clip by clip, and I have no idea why that one is now like weirdly outputting yellow. It shouldn't be. Okay, there we go. But now, obviously, you can see the problem with this, with applying this workflow to my already finished video, is that now we're color grading over top of a bunch of graphics that have themselves already actually been imported. So rather than layering my LUT underneath those graphics, it's placing it on top of it, and so that's why I don't use this workflow. So what you would actually normally do in a full-blown round trip is you actually end up with a whole bunch of branching paths at a certain point in development where, the color finishing goes out, and then when it's done, all of the graphics then get laid over top of it. No LUT. all of the graphics then get laid over top of it. So everything kind of like comes together at one point and then breaks back apart and then comes back together. It's a very complicated path. Oh, because I'm on the wrong panel. Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of how you would handle that in a full-blown round trip, is you would do your edit and then you would import your project into Resolve, and then you would go through it first. Well, you wouldn't actually go, well, your specific workflow is going to depend kind of on like what your project is, what your needs are, what your aesthetic is. So if you're looking for a uniform look, what you would actually do is you would first go through on a clip by clip basis and apply your color correction and get everything looking the same at a baseline. So it would be like, okay, well, if this is, a little bit, if all the close-ups are a little bit oranger than the wider shot, you would go through and you would, adjust the color temperature. So it's like, okay, well, we need to blue those up. And whatever. So you would do that on every single clip until everything looked uniform. And then once you had everything uniform, you would then go through on a timeline level, and you would also make sure that you're on the right thing. So you would go through on a clip by clip basis, and then you would go through on a timeline level and you would apply your global changes. And then you would go back and alter any specific clips that also need to be, yeah. It's complicated. It's complex, and people have a bunch of different ways of handling it depending on what it is that they're doing. And also, people are talking about, we'll deal with that later. Here's a link by one of the MPEG leaders about the HVEC patent pool issues that just came up. Okay, so it has to do with the patent pool. I know one of the, so people are talking about one of the other issues with HVAC, which is the CPU demand, that is definitely part of the issue, but I'll need to read this patent stuff. And yeah. Oh, right. One of the earlier questions that I started answering was, somebody asked, why is it that I keep telling people to get Resolve instead of Vegas? Okay, so Vegas is not very good. It's not awful, but it's also not very good. And if you're going to go through the process of learning how to edit, like if you're going to learn your way around a nonlinear editor, you're already kind of as a baseline looking at a fairly substantial learning curve. And so the learning curve difference between something like Vegas and something like Resolve has a steeper learning curve than Vegas, but not that much steeper if you're starting from zero. So with that in mind, if you look at the cost benefit of the two, Resolve has a light version that is free. And yeah, so it has a light version, which is actually the version, like this version I'm using right now. This is free. This is free. You can just go download this exact version, and you're not actually going to run into any real problems until you start looking for yeah. until you start trying to do things like add film grain effects or add warp stabilizer or add 3D tracking, you know. And I'm not telling you what your workflow is. I'm just telling you you probably don't need film grain and warp stabilizer for most of the stuff that you're doing. And a lot of the so the features that Resolve makes you pay for are the kinds of things that you're either going to be using at a high professional level or in a like overtly corporate setting. So if you have, so it's the things like multi-user projects and also, and like, you know, database management and all of this back end stuff that would be important if you're in a like 15-person team environment, and are utterly irrelevant if you're an individual who's just learning how to edit. Like the fact that Zack 5 is going warp stabilizer question mark question mark question mark tells you how much Zack 5 needs a warp stabilizer. Like, you know, that's kind of an indicator. Is if I rattle off a bunch of the features that are missing, if I rattle off a bunch of the features that are missing in the light version, and you don't even know what those words mean, then you probably don't need those features. Um, and yeah. But so yeah, not yet. I don't. So what you end up getting in Resolve is, I mean, so like, yes, I built that timeline, like the timeline that you're looking at right now. Yes, I built that in Premiere originally, but like, look, it's handling it just fine. Like it can handle you know, I think it can handle like 256 video tracks and 256. Actually, no, I don't even think it has a limit on how many audio tracks it can handle now that it has Fairlight integrated. And yeah. Oh, look, it even properly broke out all of the 5.1 audio that was totally driving me nuts while I was busy editing it. Like it's broken it all out into its component parts, and then we can go over into Fairlight and like, oh look, here's all of this stuff. The controls are different in Fairlight. What are the controls in Fairlight? I don't use Fairlight. I should actually learn how to use this at some point. Yeah. Yeah. So because of that, you know, you're looking at abstract number of tracks. You're gaining features like the ability to nest tracks in, or nest timelines inside other timelines. Okay, all right. Here's going to be a thing that's gonna blow your mind if you haven't ever had to like do stuff like this. Okay, so let's say you have a section of a video that's just getting really complicated and is starting to drive you nuts, and you know Vegas or Windows Movie Maker like just can't handle it, and it's getting too weird. You've got too many things layered on top of each other, and moving it around is causing you a huge hassle. In an actual proper nonlinear editor, you can just build that one part into its own sequence and then go, into another sequence and then just bring it in. So here we've got, so we're inside work 2 and we've just nested work 3 inside work 2, and we can go back to work 3 and we can nest work 1 inside work 3. And so if we go to work 2 now has work 1 and work 3 ultimately nested inside of it, because work 1 is inside work 3. So things like that, stuff, reasons, things, yeah, it adds a substantial amount to it. It adds a not insubstantial amount to the learning curve, but in the long run, it ends up saving you so much pain, so much trouble. Also, you can totally see how that footage did not properly deinterlace. Can you infinite nest the works? Yeah, pretty well. I mean, you can't nest something inside of itself, and I think it will probably prevent us from nesting. Yeah, it will prevent us from nesting work 2 inside work 1, because work 1 is inside work 3, which is inside work 2. So it will prevent you from creating a recursive loop. But aside from that, impossibility, yeah. Any questions? So I hope that I hope that answers the question. I hope that gives some kind of indication of like what the hell it is Dan is on about, with all of his garbage. But you know, like having an actual media manager, having now there are things like, as someone who uses Premiere and Final Cut, like there are things about this editing environment that I find limiting. I have my like personal pet peeves about it. I find certain parts of their UI to be a little bit too sticky, or just a little overactive. Like I think when I'm zooming in with the scroll wheel, it goes in just a little bit too aggressively. But really, I mean, they want you using like key bindings for that, and they just, I don't know. There's a logic to it that maybe that I don't always necessarily jive with coming from working in Premiere, but that's purely a matter of me already having a like pre-existing muscle memory. If you don't have a muscle memory for the way that things work, if you don't have a like preconception of like, okay, here is how a full-featured professional nonlinear editor behaves, you're not going to know the difference. So exporting your edit as an XML is what you do if you needed to grade a feature. Yes. Yeah. You, depending on the environment that you're in and the level of effects. Like, so if you're doing a feature, there's a person, like there's probably going to be a post-production supervisor whose entire job is to figure out what the workflow for reassembly is going to be based on the needs of that production. And yeah, so, but in the abstract, yes, that's what you do. And Resolve, Resolve is a industry standard program for color grading. It's not an industry standard for editing. and many people just sort of skip over the editing panel, but I've reached a point with it, like, so it has reached a point now, particularly ever since Resolve like 11. The editing features in Resolve have been powerful enough that, like, I've been in locations where it's like all I had was you know, all I had was Resolve. And if you're just cutting together something quick, like particularly if you're just cutting together something quick, like if you're just trimming down a vlog or something like that, it's super fast, super easy. If you're only dealing, like if you're dealing with 1-2 track style editing, you know, it can handle a lot more than that. But if you're doing something that is still fairly constrained, it's super fast and easy. Like it's actually really comfortable to get into once you sort of work around like figuring out what its logic is, what the key bindings are, what the modifier keys are, and how they behave. So it in particular uses a like singular tool. Oh no, not that. No, I don't actually have. Oh, hey, like here, I have an entire sequence. I have 2 sequences. They're called Money Problems and Henry is a Dick. Like here's just an entire sequence just called Henry is a Dick, because I had that as a nested sequence, because yeah. But so you get some of the see, it's a little faster than I would like. It's a little too aggressive. But you know, you get the slide tool, so it uses trim, roll, and clip all as the same tool, depending on exactly where you have it hovered. And that can be weird at times. And where is... Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm just rambling now. Yeah. Would you ever consider making tutorials? I've considered it. I've considered it, making tutorials. I maybe should. I mean, tutorials are a good way of learning yourself. You know, going through the process of taking information and distilling it down into a digestible package is actually a really good way of solidifying it in your own mind. So maybe I should do that. But it's almost 10, so we've been going for a while. We've been going for only like 2.5 hours. And I'm rambling, and my general... yeah, I'm rambling. So I'm going to sign off. The Snyder Cut doesn't exist because it doesn't exist. Yeah, they don't. It does not actually exist as a watchable movie. It exists as a like hypothetical thing on a hard drive somewhere, but it doesn't exist as a releasable, consumable product. But it does kind of, in vague theory, sort of exist. There is a thing out there that you could call a Snyder Cut, but it wouldn't look like a real movie. It would be a lot of green screen. So yeah, I hope everybody has a good night. And tomorrow, if you're going to be around tomorrow evening, we're going to be doing Shaq Fu. I'm super excited. It finally came on Friday. It's going to be pretty rad. It's going to be really exciting. I'm really looking forward to Shaq Fu tomorrow. And it will probably take me a while to fail my way through it, because I played it a little bit and it's actually pretty hard. So yeah. All right. We'll see you all tomorrow, or maybe, or not, or something else. I'm going to hit the button and then something. All right. Bye.